Now, we already gave you our BetMGM game of the week. This is a game, though, that needs to be tracked because this was in contention for game of the week for us. USC going to Nebraska. USC, a road favorite. 6 points is what they opened up at. 7:30 Eastern, NBC. It's a playoff elimination game kind of week. This game is no exception. Both teams with 2 losses. If Nebraska wins this game, schedule is pretty workable for them the rest of the way. USC still has to play Oregon, but Nebraska, Penn State doesn't look like Penn State. Before the year that you thought you were going to get there. You play Iowa, but I think you feel like that game's pretty winnable. We'll see. It's a chance for you if you're Nebraska, though, to kind of break through. Because we've been saying here for the better part of the last couple of years, this is the year where Nebraska kind of bosses up a little bit and plays to their potential of their personnel. Now you got the quarterback there in Raiola in his second year in the system. I guess second true year in the system, I should say. For USC, are you mentally tough enough to handle what happened before your bye week, take that bye week, let it digest, let it process, and then go play your best football on the road, understanding that if you lose another game, your playoff hopes are gone? That's my question for them, because I think we talk about the physical toughness for USC, and that's totally fair to discuss. It's a question I'm going to have in this game as well for the Trojans, but the mental toughness is also something you have to account for. Who are you after a loss, after a full week to think about it, and now you're on the road in a place to play in Lincoln where they're going to be turned up for that one. There's no way around that with it being in that game as well. I give a slight edge to USC in the battle on the perimeter when the football's in the air. USC, I think, is going to swing their sword a little bit here when it comes to pushing the ball downfield. If you haven't watched Mekhi Lemon play football, now is the time, dude. This is going to be a great defense for Nebraska in the secondary. They're one of the best in the country when it comes to what they're doing against the pass, by the numbers that is. But Mekhi Lemon plus Jacoby Lane, the man coverage of Nebraska, whenever they choose to do that, I think there's going to be a good amount of cut it loose here for Jaden Mayava. That's what I'm thinking, at least, whenever I see number 8 with single coverage or number 6 with single coverage. That's something to watch for in this game. I think they're going to take their swings pretty early on, and I think they're going to hit on a couple of those. I also think that there's going to be a good amount of the screen game working here for USC. It was a straight-up clinic for USC in the screen game against Michigan. They were really effective in doing that, less effective in doing that against Notre Dame. But I'm watching what Northwestern did in Nebraska, and they took advantage of the screen game a few times. I think that's something that USC will lean on here pretty heavily. So, to put it simply, I think USC scores points. I do, and that's not a surprise. They've scored 42 a game. But if you're Nebraska, what's your answer on the offensive side? I think Nebraska can run the football here. And that's kind of the thing that I'd look at here most closely if I'm a Husker fan. Notre Dame ran the football for like 300 yards against USC. Jeremiah Love had over 200 yards on the ground. What is the physicality for USC in this spot? And then what is the discipline here for USC in this spot? Because Emmett Johnson for Nebraska gets downhill with bad intentions, and Dana Holgerson, the OC for Nebraska, does a great job being creative in it. Emmett Johnson had 27 carries against Northwestern. I think that's kind of the number you look at being maybe not the magic number for Nebraska when it comes to running the football, but closer to that number. It's got to be over 22 carries for Emmett Johnson is my point here. I want to make sure that USC is shored up enough on the ground before I do anything else if I'm Nebraska offensively. I understand Raiola's got to go get it. We got to push the ball downfield. All that is true. But I am testing the USC front seven early and somewhat often here if I'm Nebraska. They do a great job, does Nebraska. I mentioned being creative, but also being pretty downhill with how they run the football. Like a lot of inside-outside zone for the Huskers. Emmett Johnson feels that extremely well, and the push that Nebraska got against Northwestern I thought was incredibly impressive. How much of that exists in this spot? Because I just told you, I think the passing game for USC, as good as that Nebraska secondary is, I don't think they've seen anything the likes of what USC is going to bring to the table here. But guess what? It might not matter if Nebraska's holding the football for the better part of these 4 quarters. Like Jaden Mayava in that passing game, it makes me nervous, but only as nervous as them being on the field. If I'm Nebraska, I say, okay, cool, we'll run the football. We'll take our 4 or 5 yards of carry where we can get it. And if that's the way we're living, we'll just hold the football. We'll just possess the football at our place, put the pressure on your defense to stop us throughout the duration of our these hopefully double-digit play drives for us here for Nebraska. If we can live that way, your advantage, if you're USC, to me becomes massively minimized. Do you get to play that way? We'll see. Now, I also think that USC scoring points in this spot is going to, at some level, require something of Dylan Raiola. And if you're Dylan Raiola, this is why you came to Nebraska, to get in games like this, against offenses like that, and go match them. Like USC scoring 42 a game, maybe they don't get 42 here. But if they get, call it 27, can you go answer the call to action there? Can you and your receiving core go answer the call to action there is maybe the better question. USC's defense has been pretty opportunistic this year. You can't surrender possessions here if you're Nebraska. Like, you can't give it away twice and expect to win the football game. That's something that makes me a touch nervous in this spot for Raiola and for Nebraska. They need to play a really clean game, which you got to play clean in any football game and feel good about your chances to win that way. You can't turn it over multiple times and expect to win the football game. But I think for USC especially, if you're giving extra possessions to Maiava and Lincoln Riley, if Minnesota's scoring against Nebraska, what's USC going to do here? I understand Nebraska, you would hope, is playing a different level of inspired and urgent, but I'm just saying that formula cannot exist here for Nebraska. And it makes me a touch nervous if it does. Now, in the same vein here, the quarterback question I have for USC is, Jaden Maiava, you've been good this year when it comes to protecting the football. Only 4 interceptions, but here's the bad news for USC fans. Those 4 interceptions, they've came in the last 3 games for USC. 2 of those against Notre Dame. And again, the Nebraska secondary, I think personnel-wise, USC matches up well, but you're 1 or 2 errant throws from Maiava away from this being a situation where you got to watch Nebraska drive the football. Your D-line's out there for a longer period of time, and that's the big thing. Limiting the overall strain on your defense in that front 7 and how many plays they have to play is going to be determined by how careful Jaden Maiava is able to be with the football. And his football personality is a little bit more gunslinger-ish, which I love, and I think you need that in this USC offense. But if you get a little bit too outside the lines with what you do structurally for USC and push the football downfield, you're a little bit too casual with the ball, that's how you lose this game. Crowd gets into it, Nebraska run game leans on you, and even if USC is good against the run early, I don't like the idea of them being there in the fourth quarter with double the snaps what the offense has had to play. So that's something to keep an eye on and something to watch for Jaden Maiava and how casual he is with the football. I break all that down, and I say all that, but I think a lot of these things overall are pretty even in this game. Like, I like USC in the passing game against Nebraska, but I don't think it's like this decisive advantage. I think it's an advantage, but is it decisive? I don't know. I like Nebraska in the run game. I think that's an advantage for Nebraska. Is it definitive to the point where they're running for 300 yards like Notre Dame was? I don't know if it's quite that much. So I break all this down. I think it's a pretty good wash for the most part across the board here. So I say all that, and then I go back to this. Who do I trust more at quarterback right now? Quarterback, play caller, who do I trust more right now? Yes, it's on the road, but I still think it's Lincoln Riley. I still think it's Jaden Maiava. I even think, too, the spot for both these teams, Nebraska didn't look that great against Northwestern. Looked even worse against Minnesota with the way they lost that football game. USC beating Michigan a couple of weeks ago, and then the way they looked against Notre Dame. If that game isn't a gross weather game, I'm not sure that USC doesn't make that game a bit closer. I've been more impressed by the trend of USC and them knocking on the door of that win against Notre Dame than I was with Nebraska knocking on the door for a loss against Northwestern. So I'll take USC to win in this game. I'll actually take them to cover that number. I think final score is USC 31, Nebraska 24. So USC favored by 6. I think they cover that number by a point and win by 7. USC, now I understand the path ahead is not easy. You still got to play Oregon, but I don't know. 2 losses in the month of November right now. USC, their playoff hopes are intact. So USC wins, USC covers, and they get another Big Ten victory under their belt for Lincoln Riley and company.